Hi there, Anne-Marie here. Today I'm sharing 3 new tips for fussy cutting. I don't believe I've shared these specific tips before, certainly not in a fussy cutting specific video, so I wanted to go ahead and put those out today. Also, pumpkin spice is back in case you missed it. I don't know how you could miss it, but maybe you did. But I celebrated with some pumpkin spice nails. I maybe went a little too heavy on the whip, but whatever, they were fun. Anyway, today I'm making some cards with a pumpkin spice theme. I'll show you the basic steps for the whole process, but really the most time is spent on the 3 fussy cutting tips. So there's a lot of great videos out there about fussy cutting, but again, I just haven't seen these 3 specific tips even when I went looking for them. So hopefully this is a unique video and you haven't heard these tips before. But let's find out and get started. To start, I stamped my little coffee cups in archival ink. I used a Tombow pressed onto a plastic palette and added some water to watercolor them in. Next, I wanted to add a little cinnamon sprinkle, so I used a torn up Post-it to mask off the parts of my images that I didn't want to get sprinkled. I let those dry and stamped the faces, and then we came back to do our fussy cutting. I got out my glass mat. Now, this is not an official tip for this video. This isn't one of the 3 because I know I've talked about this before. But if you are new to fussy cutting, please know that glass mats and craft knives are like your best friend, especially for what we're getting ready to do, which is cutting interior pieces. It's simply too difficult to get into these areas with scissor blades, even precise ones, and don't try to use a picture frame. I have heard that before as like a frugal repurposing tip. I feel like you're just begging for a serious hand injury and a huge ER bill. So don't do that. Get an actual glass mat for this use. Okay, now here is tip number 1, which maybe you could have guessed, which is start by cutting out the interior pieces. So for example, we have a coffee cup and we're going to cut it out, but we also want to cut out around the handle. So in order to do that, I'm going to leave the coffee cup as part of that bigger overall piece of paper. You need to leave your image as part of that bigger overall sheet because that's going to give it enough structural integrity that you can slice the knife through where you want to without slicing it where you don't want to, really without tearing the image. If I had tried to cut the coffee cups out roughly and then went back to cut out the handles, I was going to wrench it just enough while I was trying to hold it in place to work my knife around that I would have ripped it. I've done it so many times. I have learned this lesson very painfully. Those handles are very thin, so we want those surrounded by the whole piece of paper to provide as much support as possible. It's just too easy to nick straight through a delicate area or to, again, tear it in half. So I always recommend doing knife work for interior pieces first. My second tip is to use these little paper files to fine tune any rough edges. Now, hold on, because I know what you're thinking. If you've been around as long as I have, you recognize that these are from Basic Gray back in the day, released as like a paper shaping set of tools. And I've not seen anybody else make this tool. However, we all know crafting companies repurpose tools across industries, right? And so I found these at hardware stores now. If you look in the description box below, I'll have a non-affiliate link, just a plain old link, to show you what I'm talking about. But here's a screenshot too. These are these tiny handheld files, and they're great for detail work like this, for getting into, again, those nooks and crannies and helping shape the edges of your work. These work best when you move them in only one direction. So don't saw back and forth because, again, you're just going to rip things. But you can gently roll it in a rounded opening so that you're putting less pressure on the paper. So there's less chance of tearing and ripping and awfulness. My third tip is for if you still have a few stragglers that you can't smooth perfectly or to your satisfaction with those tools. Maybe the edge of the paper is just too stark of a white against the black outline of the stamped image. Or maybe you even cut off a little bit of the outline accidentally. You're going to just grab a marker that matches the ink you stamped in. In my case, a black Tombow, since I stamped in black archival ink. And then I just rolled my edge of my pen against the side of the paper. I didn't really draw directly on the surface of the paper. I just rolled it along the interior edge there where I needed to add that color back. So now I've got a complete stamped image again, and it looks like my fussy cutting was perfect. So then to finish the cards, I finished cutting out the coffee cups. Just general fussy cutting tips. You want precision scissors. You want to start by rough cutting out something, like leaving a big margin around it, and then go back to get the details and turn your paper as you cut. Although it's really kind of a bit of a dance. I move my paper, I move my scissors. My hands just kind of have to work in concert to balance that out for the most precise cut. Then I used a stamp positioner so that I could give myself room to adhere the fussy cut image and still have room for all 3 lines of my sentiment. I added a bunch of die cut leaves, and here's just another shout out for those tiny files. I used them a few times on these cards when those skeleton leaf cuts didn't cut all the way through. So they were really handy to touch up a cut. Last but not least, I added in bling and colors that coordinated with the leaves and the other pattern paper. And here are the final cards. You can see on the coffee cups, I popped them with foam tape, and I added a teensy bit of a warm gray watercolor shadow as well. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please click like or subscribe. I would love to see you around again. Next time, I am really hoping to have my next Cute Cards Quick video. It's really done. I just have to finish cutting out thousands of tiny flowers so I can take the picture. But be sure to check back. In the meantime, have a happy, scrappy week. Bye.